I think a lot of these ideas and improvements that we're making are informed by the community around us. And so that's a key part of how we're going to make LabVIEW better.
Welcome to the LabVIEW experiment. I am your host, Sam Taggart from SAS Workshops. In my 15 years of working with and training developers, I've had the opportunity to conduct a lot of experiments. Over here, we believe in embracing failure as the essential learning experience that it is. And what better way to learn than from other people's mistakes? In this podcast, I talk to industry experts, colleagues, and friends about their failures and how they have turned them into future successes. All right, so I am here with Siddharth Sethi, and he is from NI. And I know you mostly because I always see you with Eric, and I kind of associate you two together. I'm not entirely sure, exactly what role each of you play, other than I know you're both at a lot of the champions meetings, and you're kind of involved in the direction of LabVIEW. So
Yeah.
I was thinking maybe you could start by just clarifying exactly how you fit into the NI system, and yeah.
Yeah. I'll start maybe by kind of giving a little bit of a history, just to kind of explain how I kind of ended up where I am. So I've actually been at NI for over 15 years. I think it's coming up on like 17 years. Started off in LabVIEW doing a lot of development, LabVIEW FPGA specifically, and then spent the better part of a decade in kind of the LabVIEW ecosystem of R&D teams. Eventually moved into product management for a lot of our software products, including LabVIEW. Today, I lead the overall test software product management team. So a lot of what I work on, and so Eric is actually on my team. A lot of what I work on is engaging with a lot of our customers, a lot of our internal teams, to set a direction for LabVIEW, as well as all of the other products in our ecosystem and our portfolio. Get a chance to work with a lot of our R&D teams to build out our products and our features, but then also work with a lot of our front-end teams, our go-to-market teams, our sales, marketing, working with our channel and our customer base as well. So it's a very business-oriented role, but the cool thing is it's at the nexus of a lot of different functions and responsibilities. And so it keeps things interesting. So I hope that explains.
Yeah. No, well, that gets me rise to a couple questions. So I know NI has lots of other software products besides LabVIEW.
Yeah.
Which one do you think is most underrated?
Most underrated, TestStand, for sure.
Okay.
I think if we look at TestStand and we look at how capable it is, it has surprisingly not as much traction as LabVIEW for what it actually is. And so if there's anything, I want to see that product continue to grow, continue to develop. I think there's also products like System Link, which is not as old, not as long as in our portfolio as TestStand is. But System Link is another area that's like immensely powerful, especially when you start thinking about how you manage across multiple assets, multiple teams, and multiple systems. So those are maybe two. I know you asked for one, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I got a couple more questions along those lines. But so when it comes to System Link, correct me if I'm wrong, but they made some changes announced recently, right? They have like a lower price tier or something now.
That's right. So we launched a new edition of System Link last year, that is easier to get started and up and running for kind of the small lab environment.
Mhm.
And so it's a lower price point, but they've made the team has made quite a bit of improvement around the getting started experience. How do you get set up and going faster, managing a few assets, a few test systems. So I'm pretty excited. Because previous to that, I think a lot of the kind of perception was that this is a large kind of enterprise level deployment and millions of dollars of outlay, or at least hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that's nowhere near the case for this new edition, right? And we'll continue to kind of build out and make it more capable over time. So
Now, I am not a big system user, but my main understanding there's basically like two main parts to it, right? One is like managing assets, and then the other is like data collection and storage. Is that?
yeah, there's two main kind of areas of focus. One is asset management, right? So managing across all your systems, looking at utilization, deploying software. And then the other is what you call the data piece, right? So managing your data, building custom dashboards and doing analysis. Again, like this, as data begins to proliferate, especially in the test space, it is a really nice solution for aggregating, organizing all that, governing it, and then being able to present and do analysis, right? So yeah, both that and TestStand are pretty exciting products. So.
So in addition to those two, is there anything else you're really excited about?
Well, there is a little thing called Nigel that we've been talking about quite a bit since last year. Nigel, I think with all the advancements in AI happening right now, Nigel is super promising. I think that with the way AI has the ability to disrupt how people are doing things these days, yeah, I'm pretty excited about what
So
Nigel can.
how do you see people using Nigel? Like what is the use case now and where is that going in the future?
Yeah, it's a good question. So right now, I think about Nigel as kind of my companion, right? When I'm sitting there in front of a test system doing development, trying to understand how to best use either LabVIEW or TestStand, it's really there as an assistant, an advisor, a trusted peer, right? And so that's kind of the role it plays today. And so you think about some of the capabilities that we released last year and this year. A lot of what it does is enables me to better understand, my LabVIEW code or my TestStand IP. Help me understand how I can, navigate the environments within LabVIEW or TestStand. How do I do product selection? Ask questions about our, products in our portfolio. And with the last release that we just had last week, Nigel can also now do code completion. So within LabVIEW, you can start getting recommendations from Nigel to build out your VI. And I think that's kind of this Nigel becoming this not more than just the advisor, but more like the author next to you, right? Helping you actually create. And then over time, we want to get to Nigel is almost a full-fledged member of your team, right? It can go off and do tasks and, you're still in the loop to make good decisions. But it has the ability to, I liken it to kind of improving the productivity and taking away and doing some of the mundane things. So folks like you and others can focus on like the real crux of the test engineering problem that you're focused on, right? So I think that's kind of the exciting possibility in the future. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's basically as the engineer now, I'm more worried about like bigger picture business logic specifications, trying to figure out what needs to happen as opposed to like the nitty-gritty of making it all happen, I
Yeah.
guess. Is that
Yeah, and if we think about like you talked about like past present of LabVIEW, right? If we think way back, when we introduced LabVIEW, we talked about the integration of LabVIEW with our portfolio. We used to talk about how easy LabVIEW with our hardware makes acquire, analyze, and present, right? We would have sales engineers that would go on site with a prospective customer and a new user and do a demo that showed how to acquire data, analyze data, and then present it with a LabVIEW and a DAC, a compact DAC. And it would create this aha moment because no longer did that test engineer have to worry about like, well, how do I set up my drivers and get my memory managed and how do I set up my bus and my protocol and define all of that. And here was LabVIEW with our hardware portfolio that could do that in minutes with the right abstractions. And I see Nigel providing that same level of abstraction where it can go off and take care of all these other things. So you could focus on the measurement, the design, the planning and specification, compliance, all the strategizing, and let Nigel then take care of all of that over time, right? The rest of it over time. So I think that's what's got me really excited right now about the future.
So that brings up an interesting point. So you mentioned the acquire, analyze, and present. And I feel like people have hit on this before. I think Stephen Loftus-Mercer calls it the two-humped camel. LabVIEW fills these two roles, right? One role is I'm a test engineer. Somebody threw an oscilloscope or some instrument on my desk or an NI-DAC card or whatever, and I
Yeah.
need to get data out of it and I need to plot it. And that's a very simple use case. And
Yeah.
LabVIEW makes that very easily.
Yeah.
But then there used to be this LabVIEW marketing slogan that some of us consultants kind of hated, to be honest, called programming optional. And we're like, no, we're not optional. Like, right? Because when you step up to like, okay, I'm not just collecting data from one instrument. Now I'm coordinating amongst a bunch of them. I'm running an end of line tester. I'm, doing something for some space program or whatever. The requirements become such that you actually have to do some software engineering. So I guess my question is, and this is something I've noticed, and it feels like NI is trying to push some of that lower level stuff out of LabVIEW and into things like FlexLogger and Instrument Studio. Is that like if you just get an instrument and you need to collect data and graph it, you no longer need to necessarily go to LabVIEW directly. You can now do it in FlexLogger and Instrument Studio. Is that part of the reasoning? And is that a conscious thing? Does that just happen? Is that a strategy or?
Yeah, I think, so over time we've noticed logging data, for example, you brought up Flex Logger. Logging data is a very common practice,
Mhm.
right? And a lot of people can build a logger out of LabVIEW, and a lot of people have done that over the years. But I think in the same vein of like giving customers and test engineers kind of the tools that enable them to be the most productive, why not give them a framework, a tool that is purpose built for logging, right? Give them the options to do all the triggering and all the complex logic and such, to make them more productive at that part of the job, right? Now, so that's kind of where that's born from. It's like, why not give that to them if we see this common development, right? Over and over again, people creating their own loggers and then maintaining those and things. So why not offer that, right? It's a productivity improvement at the end of the day. So that's kind of where that's born from. And that's not to say that you shouldn't use LabVIEW. The two coexist, right? And in fact, part of our strategy is now not only to continue to kind of build out the capabilities in FlexLogger, but let's also make sure that if you've developed IP in LabVIEW, that you can use it with FlexLogger or vice versa, right? Because I don't think it makes sense to create silos either, because then that's anti-productive, right? So how can we bring these productivity improvements to not just the LabVIEW community, but test engineers generally, right?
Yeah, no, I've definitely made.
How does that resonate? I'm testing that on you. Yeah.
I've definitely made a lot of money over the years writing loggers, but often I've thought like, wow, this could be a lot easier. Like it doesn't require someone with my skills. Like I want to be solving bigger and better challenges. I find just straight data logging to be kind of boring, actually.
Yeah. And so wouldn't it be better for you to spend more time maybe enhancing FlexLogger, providing some unique capabilities on top of FlexLogger over time, right?
No.
So the base is there, it's common, but you can add much more with your level of experience and understanding of various applications, right?
Yeah, I feel like that's one of those things where like again, because people were making money doing that before, that it's like this like it's challenging for people to accept that. But again, like to me, it comes back to like, yeah, I like getting paid to write data loggers, but like I could be writing so much better stuff and adding more value. If you're looking at trying to solve the customer's problem, like
Yeah.
that's a lot of what it comes back to me. And like I'm a big fan of like if you could solve the customer's problem without writing any code, like that's a better way to do it because every line of code that you create has to be tested, maintained, all this stuff
Yeah.
managed. And so if there's an out of the box solution that does it, like, and hey, they could pay me to go set up FlexLogger for them if they want, like, and I can set it up and get it to do what they want. And
Well, and logging is usually not the end all be all, right?
now,
Like that's probably like one aspect of the customer's application. Like you've now logged and acquired a bunch of data. What are you doing with that data to actually get to the real insights that maybe you wanted to get to, right? Yeah.
I feel like a lot of LabVIEW programmers and consultants leave a lot of money on the table because they help them collect the data and then the data just disappears. They go hand it off to some other team that does the analysis and all of that. And I
Yeah.
always thought that like if you can get your foot in that section as well, that's where the real money is like not collecting the data, but what do you do with it? Well, how do you take that data and convert that into business decisions that are the really valuable business decisions? Because that
Yeah. I mean, I think at the end of the day, we're all in this kind of test space, right? And our jobs are to take products and make sure that they, do what they're intended to do, right? And so all the things that we're doing along the way, whether it's setting up hardware, building an IP, doing logging, whatnot, doing the analysis, it's also we can get some level of confidence around the design of our test systems, right? Or design of our products, sorry, and do it faster so we can bring those products to market faster, right? And so, yeah, I think if the insight, it doesn't end with just logging, and I think there's absolutely opportunity to kind of how do you give those insights, and then how do you bring those insights back to the rest of the organization around you, right? So,
yeah. So there's been a big push in just software engineering in general to get iteration times down. Have you noticed in the test space, is there a big push as well to become more quote unquote agile or whatever that means anymore?
yeah, I think there is absolutely a push towards developing code faster, right? I mean, just generally speaking, whether it's agile methodologies or not,
Mhm.
I think there is definitely a push to saying, hey, how can we develop faster? And I think with the advent of like Copilot and other AI assisted tools, that push is only getting stronger, right? And so I think I would like to see us find ways to take some of those technologies that are coming that make programming easier, and apply those to our test space and continue to apply those to our test space. So then we can do the same sort of thing that we just talked about with logging, go to higher level value add, right? Programming, again, you're writing code to get to an end. How can we enable you to do that faster, right?
Well, I think you've kind of seen that in the LabVIEW space a little bit, and in terms of the frameworks that have become more popular, like Active Framework and DQMH. It's
Yep.
like you're not starting from a blank slate anymore. You've already got the messaging and communication mechanism there, and then you're just kind of filling in the blanks.
Yeah, exactly. It's those higher level kind of starting points so that you're getting a jump on what you're building, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is the 40th anniversary of LabVIEW, so I
Yep.
think we should talk about the past just a little bit. What are the biggest changes that you've seen in LabVIEW since you've been there? And along with that, like, is there a particular feature or something that you're most proud of?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, being the 40th, LabVIEW predates when I joined NI, right? I joined NI 17 years ago. And so there's a whole history and evolution even before I even got there, right? When I joined directly on the LabVIEW FPGA team. And I think that already was such a incredible advancement and application of the paradigm in a new domain, right? And I think what drew me to LabVIEW FPGA and what I'm so excited, why I was so kind of excited to join that team. My background was in electrical and digital engineering, right? And so I had done roles around VHDL development and digital engineering and FPGA development long before I came to NI. And it's hard writing circuits with text-based languages. And seeing kind of LabVIEW FPGA in action was kind of, it created an aha moment for me. So LabVIEW FPGA holds a special part in my heart, place in my heart. And I think when I first joined, I had the chance to work on some pretty cool features. I worked on implementing PXI Express support in LabVIEW FPGA. I implemented peer-to-peer streaming. If you guys are familiar with that feature as well. And so, yeah, those are some of the first features I worked on, and I still remember literally writing the code for all of that. It's ingrained in my head right now. So does that answer your question? About some of the
Yeah,
history and some
that's
of the
good.
evolution, and yeah.
Yeah. So I have another question then, and that is, how has NXG influenced the current direction of LabVIEW? Like, what pieces of that have caused a change in direction or a change in focus in existing?
Yeah. I think we could safely say that, like, I think NXG was a situation where we we thought that there was a need when there wasn't one, right? And And the reality is LabVIEW was very capable. And we learned a lot through NXG internally on how to kind of adopt and build in new processes, bring new technologies into our scope. But at the end of the day, the NXG product was not needed, right? And so being on the product management side now, I think the lesson it teaches me and that I constantly keep in mind is when we're building new products, new capabilities, we build out new strategies, new ideas, um, is it solving a customer need that isn't solved, right? Having a better mousetrap isn't necessarily the right thing to go do, right? And so there's all these ideas around like what are the most underserved needs, opportunities to really accelerate a customer's job to be done. And in the case of LabVIEW NXG, that wasn't really helping. And so it was something we shouldn't have done.
So continuing that line of thought, what do you see as the biggest opportunities for LabVIEW in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think so. One, LabVIEW is at this nexus that is pretty unique in programming in general, right? It brings together a very approachable paradigm with really compelling hardware software integration. And it's got all of the IP and libraries and IP integrations to be able to do test better than anything else, right? And if I think about the acceleration, the productivity benefits, the productivity improvements that LabVIEW brought, that's the piece that I see continuing to evolve, right? And so as we bring in like Nigel, for example, into LabVIEW, the opportunity to continue to be able to accelerate code development, do things faster and more efficiently with an assistant and author next to you, right? It's already a very capable programming language. It's already a very capable environment. So how do we take that and make it more productive, right? And I think that's where AI has the opportunity. Nigel has the opportunity to do that more.
Is that the big challenge at the moment for LabVIEW adoption? Like comparing LabVIEW to like other languages, or what do you?
That's certainly not the biggest or the only challenge, I would say, right? There's all the like a large scale development is something else is another challenge for LabVIEW, right? When I think about CI/CD workflows or large scale development, as an example, we continue to invest in like we released a Windows Docker capability, right? In the most recent, yeah. And I'm pretty sure the idea to post it on Docker Hub came from you. And so like there's still all of these other fundamental challenges that we continue to need to improve on. So I think there's an aspect of how do we bring the latest and greatest trends and technologies from the industry like AI into LabVIEW and use that. But then there's also how do we continue to solve LabVIEW and make LabVIEW a more productive language and environment for large teams to develop, right? So I think those are the two areas. Another, if I were to another one would be around how do we modernize and give the ability to develop like newer UIs, better experience around debugging, right? So those are areas that we're going to continue to explore and continue to build out as well. And you'll keep seeing that, Sam.
So another area that's on my mind, and this may not be your specialty, but I just got a thing today about the Cyber Resilience Act over in Europe and cybersecurity. Can you speak a little bit to that? I know like Steve's kind of heading a lot of that, but
Summers is talking a lot about that. It's something that we're absolutely paying attention to. There's a lot of investment going on internally. I will talk more about that in coming weeks and months. I think you're going to hear a lot about it from us. Security is absolutely top of mind. It's something that through folks like Steve and Eric, we will continue to focus on, right? And so that's what I'll share for now.
Well, I will say as a partner and a small partner, right? I look at some of the security requirements, and that's a big lift and a big ask on some of those things. And so my request from NI would be is if they make any tools to make that easier stuff, if they can make that available somehow through the program or through other things, that would be a big lift. Like for example, just like having a way to generate software bill of materials and stuff like that, like managing some of those things.
Yeah.
I know JKI's got a bunch of stuff going in that department too, and yeah.
Yeah. So we're definitely looking at all that. So stay tuned. That's all I'll say.
Oh, that's good. Let's see, what else do I have here? So we just released a new version. Well, we and I just released a new version of LabVIEW. What is the most, aside from the Nigel autocomplete thing, what is the most underrated feature? Like, is there some feature in there that you like? I wish everybody knew this existed.
Um, so like I said, we've put a lot of energy into like improving debugging workflows. So maybe if I were to think about a couple of features, like how we've improved how we do diff reports, for example. And you'll see, for example, ability to put in images into code reviews, so that you can get a richer improvement there, richer experience. That's probably one. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, can you also talk a little bit about some of the improvements in advanced kind of workflows, like the software engineering stuff, like the Docker and the CLI and things like that?
Yeah, I think so. I hear a lot about CLI from the likes of Eli, and I'm really kind of supportive of the overall effort. But I already mentioned kind of like the Windows Docker container
Mhm.
that we're releasing or released. So I think that's the big thing in this release, and how we will continue to support like CI/CD workflows.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, I've definitely noticed some improvements there.
Yeah.
Uh, it's still not like 100% there, but it's definitely getting closer, and it's making a lot of things easier. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think feedback from you and the other champions is really what we're going to keep listening to, right? I think a lot of these ideas and improvements that we're making are informed by the community around us. And so that's a key part of how we're going to make LabVIEW better.
No, I definitely feel like probably since I don't know the past 2 or 3 years that NI has done a better job. There's been more communication back and forth with all the champions and stuff, and I'm definitely seeing a lot of the suggestions getting implemented, and so that's good.
Yeah, I think one of the big things when we took on LabVIEW a couple of years ago was to go back to the community, right? There's so much we can do on our own, but there's so much more that we can do when we have active engagement and collaboration with folks like yourselves and others in the kind of the ecosystem in the community, right? So like the monthly engagements with the LabVIEW champions has been something that's been super helpful to inform exactly where we're working on. And it's not just LabVIEW, it's all the stuff around LabVIEW as well. That's really helping. So thank you to you and your audience for helping out as well, right?
So speaking of collaborating with the community, can you talk a little bit about the open source initiative that's been going on?
Yeah, I think that's so it started a couple of years ago with the icon editor. We had some conversations with Jim Kring and the JKI team around how can we make LabVIEW more accessible and harness kind of the creative energy of the entire community, right? And so we started with a pilot around the icon editor. We've also now expanded to the actor framework with help from like Alan.
Mhm.
And I think we want to continue to explore how we can continue to engage there. There's still a lot that we have to learn. Some of the capabilities that I talked about in terms of like improving CI/CD workflows are not only helping our customers, but helping that initiative as well. And I think through work that Eli's been leading around the open source kind of initiative, we're learning a lot, and we're going to continue to kind of expand that. I think we're looking for ideas for like what new repos, how do we continue to engage, how do we structure an open source community around LabVIEW. And so we're going to keep that going and keep trying to build that out over time. It's really important to me that we find ways, like I said, to work with the community and the champions and people who want to contribute to LabVIEW to make it better. So.
Yeah, I was involved with some of the CI/CD discussions with Sergio, and that definitely there was a lot of learning there on all sides, and I think that may have even driven some of the Docker stuff and the other improvements. So,
Well, thank you.
yeah. So I'm kind of curious, how do you see LabVIEW fitting in the future in relation to other NI tools and in relation to other programming languages like Python and C Sharp, how does that all play together?
Yeah. So, I think it goes back to where we started at the beginning of the discussion, right? If you've got a test engineer, their job is to um, leverage all the tools that they're avail to figure out whether or not the products that they're being asked to test are doing what they're supposed to be doing, right? And I think a large part of that is using LabVIEW to write the IP, write the frameworks, write the systems. But then around that, there's products like TestStand and SystemLink and FlexLogger and things that can help provide improved kind of productivity, right? Fill in some of these gaps in what the customer is trying to build out with these out of the box kind of frameworks and experience like products, right? Over time, what we want to do is we want to be able to continue to make sure that, well, if you're working in TestStand, you get the best experience using TestStand with LabVIEW together, or using FlexLogger with LabVIEW together, right? We don't want to create kind of siloed products. So a lot of what we've been doing is breaking down kind of those silos and making sure that the product portfolio is connected, right? You can go back and forth, leverage the IP from one and the other. And that extends to Python. That extends to C Sharp, right? If I'm in TestStand and I have Python IP that I've written out for my test steps, we absolutely want you to use those Python IP. You're not limited to just LabVIEW. You can choose, right? Mm-hmm. And there are reasons to use Python, and there are reasons to use LabVIEW, right? If you're going to look at programming language to programming language, right? LabVIEW has great out of the box experience, like integration with hardware. You can do parallelism far easier. It's far more performant in many ways. But Python has a pretty great ecosystem. You can do great analysis and visualization. So why not find ways to leverage those together within the ecosystem? So that's my kind of viewpoint on that. I want to be able to allow the test engineer to use all the tools that they're avail in the most productive way, right? To actually do what they need to do. And that applies to our partners as well that are helping those end customers as well, right? How can we make you more productive so you can build the test systems and then, that you're then selling forward, right?
Yeah, I feel like there's been a shift at NI, and I've seen some slides because it used to be kind of like LabVIEW was the center of everything, and everything went through LabVIEW, and now LabVIEW is kind of like up here with all these other things, and they're all just kind of each one kind of does what it's good at, and data and stuff gets shared back and forth, and I think that seems to sum that up pretty good.
Yeah, I'm curious, how do you feel that portfolio cohesion is coming together?
I haven't been using the other tools as much. I do feel like integrating LabVIEW code with Python has been pretty easy.
Okay.
I think I heard something. I know there's a web view control, and I think did the NI like create their own now? Because there used to be one on VIPM, and now there's like a native one for like doing some JavaScript and web type stuff.
Yeah.
So that's been going well. I've seen some of the demos of people like taking stuff from FlexLogger into LabVIEW and back and forth. And I've done TestStand, so I know TestStand can call all kinds of stuff, and you can call from LabVIEW into TestStand. So yeah, I mean overall, I think it's pretty cohesive, but I'm sure there's probably some rough edges.
Yeah, and we'll continue to smooth out the rough edges over time. So
yeah. You get the main use case, and then when you hit some rough edges, you go smooth those out. So yeah, yeah. I have one last question. And that is around academics. Do you have anything to do with that? And can you comment on that? Because it feels like for a while, academia kind of got ignored in a way. I mean, I don't know if ignored is the right word, but lost its importance. And now I feel like it's gaining more importance. So can you speak to that?
yeah, that's not an area that I'm directly involved in, but for sure, academic and being involved in the academic space is something really important. That's really important. So we're always partnering with research institutes and universities around us to make sure that we're exposing new engineers, new students to LabVIEW and NI products in general. And so that remains a focus of ours. We're also looking at generally like how do we continue to improve how we onboard and bring on new people, new engineers into LabVIEW. And that's not limited to just academic either, right? I think we want to find ways that, like, if you have new hires, new test engineers within your project teams, how do we make it easier so that you can get into LabVIEW, right? So that remains kind of an ongoing focus. But I hear you. There's always decisions and things that are happening that are evolving. I'm not as connected to those.
Okay. I'm curious, just how do you see AI affecting people going into the like bringing on new people? Is it a plus or is it hindering that or?
Bringing on new people to NI.
Well, I mean, just in general, like in the test and measurement industry, for example, like in the software, just general software, right? People are worried that new people, like the AI is taking a lot of the entry level positions away, and so it's harder to bring new people up. Do you see that in the test and measurement industry, or is that different? Or
I think it's a little bit different in the test and measurement industry, right? And I think that's different for any industry where there is kind of this niche or kind of this highly integrated hardware software play, right? I think AI is doing a tremendous amount of lift when it comes to kind of greenfield applications that don't really interact with real world like hardwares, but when it comes to like complex application test system development like we do in test and measurement, like you've got things to worry about, like not only the hardware software integrations, but security, compliance. You've got distributed systems that are globally located nowadays. You're collecting all this data that needs to be correlated. It's highly specialized. And so I think there's only so far that general purpose large language models and AI can really do in that space, right? And I think we'll continue to be able to find ways to be able to continue to kind of bring complex kind of engineering domains and disciplines in. But pure software engineering is absolutely being kind of changed.
yeah, no, that's good. Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. All right. One final question I like to ask everybody is, can you tell me about an experiment that you tried and
Yeah.
learned from it?
Yeah. So maybe not one technical or from a
That
project.
counts.
But I mentioned I started an I 17 years ago. I spent the 10 years of my life in R&D doing product development. After 10 years, I decided to venture out and experiment with different roles outside of R&D. So I took on a product management role, thinking originally that it'd be an opportunity for me to kind of learn a little bit about different parts of the business or different discipline, and then use that insight and bring it back to engineering. I was still an engineer at heart. I'm still an engineer at heart, and I thought, I'm going to go back to R&D. I'm going to take what I learned about customers and other stuff and bring it back. And I think when instead I've ended up staying down this kind of product management track, and it's been almost a decade in that track now. And I think the thing that I learned is how important it is to kind of keep an open mind, be receptive to new ideas and new concepts. And I think that applies not only to this situation, but even in all our kind of problem solving and experimenting that we do. You never really know what outcome you will get sometimes. And I think being open and receptive to whatever possibilities might come and whatever learnings you might eventually come about is something that is critical as an engineer or as anybody, frankly. So I don't know. That's going to
Yeah,
be, yeah.
I am curious. So, like, what attracted you? What caused you to stay as a product manager? Is it just
Yeah, I found it gave me an opportunity to work even more closely with other parts of our business, as well as other parts, work closely with our customers, to really just approach kind of how our products are developed in a different way that I just enjoyed, right? And I think it's just something that I didn't expect to enjoy as much as I did, and that was the learning, right? I thought there was nothing better than sitting in front of a whiteboard and whiteboarding and then writing some code. And I really enjoyed that, but I've really enjoyed this part as well. And I think you just need to be open to it. So,
well, I think going back to our conversation earlier, living vicariously through the customers, I think, you work with people and they do really cool stuff. And the closer you can get to that, sometimes it's good.
And I think that's part of what I think makes what we do so special, in that we work with so many different customers doing so many different types of things, right? You mentioned before we got started working on some pretty cool space projects. And I've heard, we get exposed to some of that. We also get exposed to some really cool things like EV and what's going on in the autonomous space. There's also consumer electronics and what's going on in the life sciences space. And we get get a chance to work with so many different cool applications. And I think that's pretty unique about the space that we play in, right?
No, yeah, I enjoy it. I like the variety, so it's great.
Oh, the variety is great. Spice of life. So.
All right. Well, thank you very much. That's it for today's episode of the LabVIEW Experiment. Thanks for listening. If you have any comments or questions, head over to thelabviewexperiment.com and drop me a note. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on Twitter and Instagram @TheLVExperiment.